Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another episode of Hobbyside. And on this episode we'll be focusing on our newly crafted three-dimensional terrain that we use for our Zone Mortalis terrain sets for our Necromunda Battle Reports. And as you can see here, it looks really awesome with the three-dimensional terrain being used on it. And the great thing about this terrain is that we can use them for all the Zone Mortalis terrain tiles that come with the starter set of Necromunda. You could also use exactly the same terrain on the Bad Zone Delta expansion set for the Zone Mortalis tiles as well. And as you can see here, we have a newly created series of terrain pieces, very modular, to create the walls that you would use in your Zone Mortalis Battle Reports and in your games. So that is a really awesome piece of terrain that were made by our resident terrain wizard, Iron Major. So Iron Major, if you're watching this video, this one goes out to you, buddy, because you are the genius mastermind that went behind creating this terrain. So we're going to talk about this real quick, talk about some of the features about the terrain that was created. We're going to show you some pieces that we have made up for it, and talk about exactly how we use it for our games. So with that being said, let's get this video report on a roll. Alright, so here is a close-up of a typical Zone Mortalis terrain tile that is used in the starter box set of Necromunda. So in case you guys are unaware, in Necromunda, the starter box set gives you, I think it's like 9 or 8 12-inch by 12-inch tiles that are made out of cardboard, so that way you can play games of Necromunda on it. So represent the underbelly of the inner hive and how it's cramped, and they got these tunnels and stuff that you can fight into, all that kind of stuff. But the problem with the Zone Mortalis situation that you have here, the problem is that, for example, I'll take off the terrain real quick. When you get the actual game, and you actually get the tile, we're going to take off these terrain pieces real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. The terrain tiles does not have any three-dimensional effects on it. In fact, you have these red outlined areas that are done in black to represent the fact that you have walls there that you can't see over, because the idea is supposed to be that these walls are in the way and you can't really shoot at each other, that kind of thing. The only problem with that is that you could play games in Necromunda just with that, with your little miniatures, and not have to worry about actually having any walls up. But the problem is it's kind of boring looking, and plus it's not realistic and it's not as dynamic looking. And so because of that, Iron Major, our resident terrain tutor, our terrain wizard actually created some pieces that we can use. As you can see, they're all totally modular, that we can actually use to set up our terrain like so. So that way we could set up our Zone Mortalis terrain and have it look really three-dimensional looking as well. Basically, each of the sections of the walls is tall enough to actually put the door miniatures that we could use here. We could put the door miniatures inside of it if you wanted to actually have gates and doors, and so that way you create this urban labyrinthian type of motif going on with your terrain. So that way you have the three-dimensional abilities to play games in Necromunda. And that's exactly what we have going on here as well. So it's really cool. The nice part about the way the terrain is set up here is that it's completely modular, so that way you can take it apart and reassemble it any way you want to, so that way you have nearly limitless combinations of battlefields that you can use using Zone Mortalis. And the cool thing about this is that the terrain that we use is actually all homemade. Iron Major actually built all this himself and actually painted all of it, and we use it for our battle reports. And it is significantly cheaper to use this than it is to actually buy box sets. Now there are a couple of manufacturers that do make hive terrain that you could use for this. There's a couple of them out there. You could buy the Zone Mortalis set from Forge World, which costs you like $500. There's also some third-party companies that also make it out of MDF. They also make it out of resin, but those cost like $150+ for a terrain set, and that's super expensive. But we'll talk about the cost savings using this method here in another episode when we do a cheap shot on this one. So as you can see, close-ups on this look really awesome. Looks really cool. So now that we're talking about the way the battlefield looks, we're going to take some look at some individual pieces of the Zone Mortalis terrain and talk about exactly how they're made. Alright, so here is a close-up of some of the terrain pieces that we use for the Zone Mortalis. We basically have 3 pieces. We have a 2-section wall section, we have a pillar, and then we have a 1 wall section as well. And this is what pretty much makes up the 3 different types of terrain that we use in order to create our modular terrain. So you can see here, you can kind of see a little bit of the gaps between the walls and stuff, so that way you can see exactly how it'll look once you get it all organized. And what Iron Major did is he pretty much made this out of blue insulation foam as well as foam core is pretty much what he did. So if you look real close here, what he did is he actually took 2 pieces of 1-inch thick blue insulation foam and he cut them to the dimensions that he wanted to for the pillars and he glued them together. And then he mounted the base on foam core. As you can see here, just cheap dollar store foam core as well. And then of course he just cut it and sculpted the dimensions they needed to. He went for kind of like this octagonal type shape, so you have like 4 major sides and then 4, corners like you have here to make it look a little bit more of an octagon shape. So you glued those 2 pieces together, sculpted it, and then mounted on a piece of foam core. If you notice right here on the bottom, we actually put individual pins, so that way there's more security for the base going inside the structure. Plus, it adds a little bit of weight to it, so that way it doesn't, get tipped over too badly. And then what Iron Major did is then he covered the entire thing in wood glue and sand, as you can see here. And then he covered the entire thing with gray paint, dry brushed it, add some brown and black washes to it to make it look weathered and dirty. And he put Mod Podge on the outside of it to keep it sealed as well. So if in case you're wondering what the dimensions are, this pillar is a 2-inch square, roughly. Because if you look at the Zone Mortalis, each one of these different squares is approximately 2 inches by 2 inches in its dimensions. And then of course he made it just as tall enough so that way you could put a door next to it. So that way it would be the same height. He did exactly the same construction technique with the walls as well. So you can see the walls are just 1 inch thick of blue insulation foam and mounted on a piece of foam core. Pins to hold into place so that it's secure. Cover the outside in water and wood glue and sand and painted and dry brushed and washed to make it look like that. So that's a 4-inch section, so it's 4 inches wide, as well as 4 inches long, as well as 1 inch wide. And then the one wall section is 2 inches wide, 1 inch wide as well. Exactly the same construction technique used to create that one as well. And so we made a bunch. I forgot how many pieces we actually made of the 2 wall sections, the 1 wall section, and the pillar. But we have enough to actually create a whole, 3 by 3, 9 tile piece of terrain battlefield. So that way we have a fully kitted out piece of terrain for all of it, and it looks really, really awesome and looks really dynamic. So yeah, very happy with the way that this came out. And Iron Major, you are a genius when it comes to making this stuff. So yeah. That's our video for our Zone Mortalis terrain and the 3-dimensional terrain that we created for that. We'll talk a little bit more about the construction techniques and the money that you can save using this method of creating your own Zone Mortalis terrain in another Cheap Shots later on. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and blogger.com for all the latest greatest news about the hobby aspect of our channel. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. You guys stay classy. Peace out.